Hello everyone, and welcome to the new episode about editing with Darktable. In this episode we will continue our topic about soft look in photography, how to achieve it with Darktable, and I have a few more examples which I think could be interesting for you, so let's get started. This will be our first example, and before we can judge what should we do, let's make some adjustments first, lens correction and also denoising. And I will also like to add some saturation with color balance RGB to be able to judge the colors that we have in the photo. Because in this photo, the colors will be quite important. As you can see, we have some kind of wood, and in the middle we have some nice river. And I would like to draw attention of the viewer to that river, to that bluish river. So let's make some adjustments in white balance. So start with this thingy and see what we get. And I think I would like to have a bit more warmer scene, something like that, because now we have two different areas in terms of color. One is that red surrounding of the river, and the river itself is greenish or bluish. And now we have nice difference between those two areas, and already with that we have draw attention to the river. But that's not all. Now what we can do is to also count the texture of the wood, and that can be done with contrast equalizer. I have already used it quite extensively in the last episode, something like that. But I don't want to influence the texture of the river. I want that flow. I don't want to calm that down. So I will also add some mask and apply that contrast equalizer only on the warm part of the photo. So let's do that. I can use something like that and invert it so that we have mask approximately here. Maybe add some feathering, and now everything is influenced except our river before and after. The next step will be to maybe to add a bit more contrast of the photo, or maybe before we do that I can add even more diffusion by diffuse and sharpen. Let me do that first. So I will move it above contrast equalizer and just use first two sliders for some diffusion, maybe iteration about 2. And this time I will use harmonic mean as blend mode, and also only applied on the, I think I can use a raster mask from contrast equalizer. Yeah, so let's do that. Just a bit more of diffusion. The finer scale, maybe we can play a little bit more with iterations. Let me see. I don't want to go too far, but yeah, it's a bit more diffusion on all those branches and grass in the foreground and so on. So okay, now we can go to color balance RGB again and add some contrast there. Maybe go down a little bit with the shadows and add some contrast in the highlights. And as you can see, if we are going higher with the highlights, I'm losing the details here. What we also can do, and I will suggest to do it often, to be able to control the transition between those areas, shadows, midtones, and highlights in perceptual brilliance grading, you can also use the masks. So let's say I would like to tighten that highlights area a bit more. So I can use mid-gray fulcrum here, mask, and go to the right. And as you can see, we are tightening that highlights area, which is quite good because we are only influencing with the highlights, the highest highlights, so to say. And we can also do that with highlights fall off. About there. And now we can go back and make even more adjustments. Let me see what is nice. Something like that. And as you can see, we have now quite interesting play here in the water with a lot of details. And we have removed those details, that texture from the rest. And now our river looks much better. I think I could go and add and reduce the brightness of the highlights even more with a tone equalizer. So let's do that first. Maybe just a bit, just not to lose the details in the highest highlights, something like that. Okay. And the last step, because it's handheld camera, I didn't have a tripod. So I think I could add one more instance of diffuse and sharpen just for sharpening, but not too much. I don't know, we can use some preset here, sharpness preset maybe, and go with the radius a bit higher. Yeah, about there. Just to save some details, fine details. Okay. And now you can see we have draw the attention of the viewer directly to this nice bluish river. So let's see before and after. As you can see, it's quite a mess here with a lot of details, tons of details that are distracting. And at the end, we have nice, calm photo with interesting area in the middle with that river. Okay, so let's use another example. With this photo, I would like to address one question that I've been asked quite often, and that is if it's possible with Darktable to mimic some kind of diffusion filter, especially for the night scenes, which I used quite often for artistical purposes, as you can see some examples here. And Darktable gives you, especially the diffusion and sharpen module, gives you the opportunity to mimic those filters quite realistically. So let's try to do some example. Maybe something like this, scene with that bluish reddish look, with this photo here. As always, first some correction, line correction, lens correction, denoising. And I don't want to brighten the photo because it looks good as it is. Maybe just the bottom part. Let me try that with another instance of exposure module. Real quick, maybe choose something like that here. More feathering. And add some brightness so that we have that road a bit better. That we can see the road a bit better. And now the idea is to all those lights should have that diffusion, that bloom, and maybe also we can also colorize them, and the rest should be blue. So let's get started. Maybe as first step, I would like to use contrast equalizer just to tame down a little bit the texture of the photo, so that we get that softer look immediately, something like that. And now the idea is to colorize those highlights. So let's use whatever, red RGB primaries for that. And I would like to colorize those highlights here. And to be able to do that, I will use the mask for that. So let's choose only the highest highlights here and see the mask. Maybe go a bit down, approximately there. Add some feathering. Yeah, and maybe also a bit contrast. And now what we want to do, we can now use tint purity for that. Let's find some color, let's say here, and go with the purity quite high. We can now go even higher than 20%, let's say 60% or something. Now you don't see any changes immediately, but you will see those changes a bit later when we add the diffusion for that. And we could actually use diffuse and sharpen and diffuse the scene so that you see what is happening. So let's use first and second order speed. I think it will be enough. As you can see, when I add the radius span, those highlights are already reddish. That's because I have colorized that area. And to be able to get the blue, we need one more instance of the RGB primaries. And this time we can also use raster mask and inverted mask, so that we raster mask from RGB primaries 1 and inverted inversion, so that we colorize everything else. And now we can choose some kind of blue, let's say there, and go again with that purity quite extreme high, let's say 60%. And we have immediately that look. We can improve it even better later. Let me see the color first. Let's say, what could be good? Maybe something like that, a little bit more cyanish. And we can now improve a little bit more the diffusion of the highlights. Go back to diffuse and sharpen. I would like to add some sharpening, or go with radius a little bit here, so that we have that we can clearly see the text here. And what I don't want to have is, I don't want to colorize this area here, so let's exclude that with the mask. So we go to the first instance of the RGB primaries, go back to the masking tab, and use also path. Let's go down a little bit and choose only those highlights here, because I want only those highlights to be influenced with that colorizing. And maybe you can add some purity, I don't know, so to say, the intensity of the light. And let me improve the mask even better. Let's see what happens if we go a bit more in this direction. Yeah, about there. Okay. As you can see now, we have that diffusion, which is quite similar to this one. Maybe we can improve the colors a bit more. We can also use color balance attribute to add some saturation. Not that much in the highlights. Let's go don't go that far. Let's compare it again. Yeah, it's approximately like that. So let's see before and after. Exposure. Take a snapshot and go to the last tab. Now we have created some kind of artistic bloomy effect on that photo. I'm not fan of that, but since I've been asked to mimic that, that would be one method how to can achieve that quite realistically. As you can see, for example, this area is quite nicely mimic quite nicely that effect. Okay, the next example. Diffusion can also be quite useful for portrait photography because you can soften the skin a little bit and also remove the harsh local contrasts. And for that I have here one portrait from signatureedits.com, one site that offers free RAW files. And what I would like to do, I would like to get a nice flat looking high key portrait with pastel colors. And that will be also a nice transition to the next episode, because one of the users or one of the viewers has asked me to make one episode about photography with pastel colors. So that will be one example. Okay, let's get started. So first thing what we need to do is, as always, lens correction, denoising. And maybe I would like to improve the brightness of the photo, but not with the exposure, because I would like to that nice flat look. So I'll use tone equalizer and maybe add my own preset, something like that. Let me see, maybe also go with the edges, refinement a little bit, so that we have that nice look. And as next step, we would like to soften the texture with contrast equalizer. So let's go down, not that much, maybe just a bit. We can also go with the edges a bit up, so that we don't lose the sharpness that much. And you can see we have now a nice and soft look, but I would still like to add some sharpening to the photo. We can do that with diffuse and sharpen module. So I will move it above contrast equalizer, because I would like to apply the sharpening after that softening of the photo. And what I have noticed that a lot of users have the difficulties to understand how to use this module for sharpening. And so let's make some quick demonstration. What is quite important are those order speed sliders. As you have seen in the last examples, or in the last episode also, we have used those for diffusion. So let me go with radius a little bit higher and iteration, so that you can see what is happening. And now if I go with first order speed, for example, if I go to the right, I'm diffusing the photo, and if I go to the opposite direction, I'm sharpening the photo. And first and second order speed are working on the large scales, so they are quite useful, for example, for something like local contrast. And third and fourth order speed are quite useful for sharpening, because they're working on the finer scales, as you can see. This one or this one. Okay, and you can, what we can do, we can combine those two pairs, if you wish. In this case, I would like to add some contrast, some local contrast. So I will go with first order speed and maybe a little bit of sharpening. So I will also use the third order speed. But as you can see, we have some issues, especially on the edges, like this one, like here. You see we have some fringing If I disable it, you can immediately recognize that. And we need to get rid of that. And for that purpose, we have also those direction sliders, anisotropy sliders, and every auto speed has his own anisotropy slider. What that means? Normally, when we use diffusion or sharpening, that diffusion or sharpening is going on in every direction. For example, in direction of the edge or in direction of the gradient, perpendicular to the edge. And now we can force that diffusion or sharpening in a particular direction. So let's say in this case we need to force the diffusion or the sharpening to go more along the edges and much less along the gradients, because we want to sharpen the edge. And to be able to do that, we can use now first order anisotropy, because we have used first order speed, and go to the right, and also use third order anisotropy, because we have used third order speed for sharpening. And as you can see, we have immediately improved that. Maybe we can use a snapshot to be able to demonstrate it better. Let's go for. As you can see now, we have applied the diffusion more or less only on the edge, but we have some issues. For example, here, as you can see, we have some problems that also need to be resolved. That can be also done with edge sensitivity. Look what happens if I move the edge sensitivity to the right, practically excluding some edges, and now we have improved that quite a lot. So you see, we have some local contrast and sharpening, but without those issues, especially on the edges. Now I can go with radius span a little bit higher or lower. Let's say I would like to go somewhere here, improve that whole thing a bit more. That is now fine adjustments. But as you can see, we have over sharpened the photo. I don't want to apply that sharpening everywhere. What I would like to sharpen are the area around the eyes, eyebrows, eyelashes, and so on, and not that much in the skin. So we can also use some mask for that, and quite important mask is detail threshold mask. So let me enable the masking option, and if I go with detail threshold mask to the right, I'm only selecting more or less the edges. And how far I need to adjust that. How far should I go? Let's say about there. But it's not perfect. We can also use brightness mask, G mask here. For example, exclude the highlights from the mask. Let me see. About there. Touch feathering, maybe also mask contrast. And now we have practically more or less selected the areas that we want to sharpen. And you may notice now that sharpening only applies on these areas. Okay, I think it's too much. So let's go with iteration bit down, maybe also with those sliders. We know can work a little bit on the details, maybe also radius. And now we have nice sharpening. I hope you can recognize that on the video without influencing that much the skin. Looks quite nice now. Okay, I would like now to improve the brightness of the photo and also a little bit of colors. So what we can do is to white balance the color, the photo a little bit. Let's see what we get. And we get a quite bluish look, what I don't like. Maybe we can choose some area here, for example. I don't want to get that skin tone brownish. I would like to keep it a little bit purplish. Just a touch, something like that. And because now she has nice blue eyes, it will be quite nice to have the background and maybe also the skirt here in that color, so that we have nice combination between those cold and warmer colors in the photo. So for that we can use RGB primaries module. Let's change the hue to some area that could be interesting and go up. And now we are concentrating only on the background. Let's say somewhere here. Maybe some kind of cyanish look. But I don't want to influence everything. I have lost now that purplish skin, so I would like to improve that by excluding the red area or the warm area. Something like that, maybe add some feathering. And as you may see, now we have a colorized background, and I have nice contrast in the colors between the skin tones, those roses, those pink roses, and the background. And now we need to improve a little bit the brightness and also the saturation. It's oversaturated for that pastel look, so we can use color balance RGB, maybe go a bit up with highlights and desaturate also the highlights a little bit. I don't know, maybe we can add a bit more saturation in the shadows. Let me see. You don't want to have too much difference in saturation of the skin. Maybe something like that. Yeah, that looks nice. And as you can see, we have improved the photo quite a lot. So let's see before and after. I don't know what to start, maybe by lens correction. And before and after. Now I have that nice skin tone, also enough sharpening on those areas that we want to have sharpened. And soft, nice soft skin look. And that is about how one example of that pastel looking high key portrait that you have with this method. Okay, so that will be everything for this episode. And if you have some questions, please be free to ask in the comment section or go to the pixel.us discussion forum and ask your questions there. So thank you for watching, and until the next time.